The global movement of mining talent presents both challenges and opportunities for resource-rich countries. Today's guest is a South African mining engineer living in the UK, serving as a strategy consultant. Following her MBA at Oxford University, we'll explore her journey from South Africa to the UK, the factors influencing talent retention across borders, and how her experience with the UK energy structure offers insights to South Africa's just energy transition.
Paseka Khosa-Chavalala is a South African mining engineer whose career exemplifies global talent mobility in the resource sector. After working in multiple companies across South Africa as an engineer, she pursued an MBA at Oxford University and subsequently established herself in the United Kingdom. Now serving as a managing enterprise strategy and AI value consultant at IBM, she brings a unique cross-continental perspective to mining innovation. Today, we'll explore her professional journey from South Africa to the UK, the complex dynamics of global talent retention in the mining sector, and how her experience with the UK's energy infrastructure might offer valuable insights for South Africa's just energy transition.
Paseka, welcome and thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Tlochi. Thank you for having me as well.
Sure. Years back when you were starting your career in mining, I remember you applied for a bursary, sitting in an interview, and they asked you, and I think you're in the verge of getting into the coal mining space, and they asked you, why coal? And you said, I love dust. I think the panel laughed, and when I learned of it as well, it was quite funny until you start thinking of it that this is a child saying to you, I really need this at whatever cost. Maybe talk to us about your background and how you entered the industry.
I was born and bred in Guyana. Well, I was born in Zanin, but I was raised in Guyana. I was born in a family of 4 children, me being the last, the 4th one. And I was raised by my mother and my grandmother because we lost my dad when I was 1. So when you tell me about that story, what you remind me is the core decision behind my studying, or how I made the decision to study mining engineering.
Sure.
It started with, I think, when I was still young and I was trying to figure out what career I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I started by saying I wanted to be a lawyer.
Sure.
And my family discouraged me because they said, oh no, you're very good with science, you're very good with mathematics.
Yeah.
Why don't you look into a career that's somewhere along those lines?
Yeah.
And then I said, okay, maybe I'm going to do medicine. I'll be a doctor. But then when I did my research, I realized, oh no, medicine is going to take me 6 years. And I
Sure.
do not have 6 years.
Yeah.
I need something that's going to get me in the job market as soon as possible. As you said, you need the bursary, you need the money, you need the education as fast as you can.
Sure.
So that's when I decided engineering. But what engineering was the question.
Yeah.
And I read about all the different kinds of engineering. I had 2 that I had sampled. First was civil engineering,
Sure.
and then the second was mining. I was going to go with civil engineering, but then I realized during that time, most of my peers and most people that I knew were going into civil engineering.
Yeah.
And at that time, I don't know how at that age this came to my mind, but my thought was, in 3 years' time, 4 years' time, when we all graduate, then the market will be saturated. Who's going to hire all of us? And then the second one was mining. Why did I choose mining? Because of what it explained it to be. You're problem solvers. You are leaders in the market within mining. You are innovators. As a mining engineer, it's because your role is big. It can go from shift boss to operational strategy. It can go to anything, and so that's why I liked it. But one thing, as I was doing the interviews, getting into mining, getting the bursaries, one thing I was discouraged about the most was being female, being tiny, because I'm short, I'm small, and how I wouldn't survive the mining industry.
Sure.
And I realized that if I'm going to land a career in mining, a successful one, by starting by landing a bursary, I needed to be convincing that I'm doing this for a passion.
Yeah.
Because I realized that if they keep discouraging people like me from going to the mining industry, then no one will ever enter. I wanted to be the one to break the barriers, the one to be the example, so that other young people who are female, who are small, can also see that there's representation. We can do it. Just also prove that we can do it, right? And so that's why I chose mining, and that's why I said I love dust. That was my representation, or kind of like a desperate effort to say, I have a passion for this. I'm really sure about this. I've really thought about it, because I think everyone was just saying, oh, are you sure you want to go underground?
Yeah,
There's a
yeah.
lot of dust. It's going to be dark.
Yeah.
But most of the time, what was interesting about those interviews is everyone was discouraging women or women like you and I from entering the industry because of the sexual harassment we were going to face, or we were going to face, based on how the industry was back then. And I just felt that is not a good enough reason for us to not move into mining industry. And we needed to make that change happen by being there. When I was in the mining industry in production, whilst I enjoyed the work and I looked around, I just saw that this is not what I want to do. Specifically, I don't want to be in production. I want to be in the strategic space of mining. I want to be in the innovative space of mining. I want to be able to make it better, like the operations for everyone who's working there. And so I decided I'm going to move into consulting because in consulting I can get into business improvement, I can get into the strategy part of it, and also bring in the technical understanding of the operations. When you understand the value chain, you understand what happens within the value chain. But also with consulting, you need to understand the people as well. The people aspect. How do the mining people think? How do they speak? And how to win them over. So that's why I ended up moving into consulting. But yeah, I looked around in the mining industry and I thought, my talent would be wasted here. I was supposed to do mining. I am a mining engineer and I can make better use of this degree elsewhere.
You went ahead to pursue your MBA at Oxford University, and not only did you complete it, you did so well, and congratulations for that. You had options to study in a lot of good universities in South Africa, but we went all out to one of the top universities in the world. What made you even think of that? What circumstances brought you to say, let me try this out?
So I'm one person who believes in dreaming big. And if you've got nothing to lose, just try it. But more than anything, I think it goes back to representation. I had a dream and I thought, okay, I'm going to go to Oxford one day as a joke. I just said it as a joke. And then I did some research and later realized there's someone who worked with me in the same company who went to do the MBA in Oxford. And upon seeing that, I got affirmed that it's possible. Black child, you can do it. Girl, you can do it. It's possible. You know someone that's very close to you. And so I reached out to her and I asked her, what was the process? How did you do it? And then she helped me through the process, and the rest is history.
But there's an expectation that there was an expectation actually that you'd go there, study, come back. I don't think staying there was part of the plan.
No, it wasn't.
You left almost everything, family. I think your husband was still in South Africa at that time. Your world, essentially. What made you decide to stay in the UK and settle there?
My husband, funny enough, was the one. So I think in our space, in anyone's workspace or like space area of work, as well as given the ambitions that I have for my future in terms of my career and where I want to go, global experience can be very handy because you learn about different cultures, how other people do things and how other countries run things, and just that exposure of how different markets work. So my husband encouraged me to apply for jobs whilst we're still in the UK, and if any opportunity opened that made sense, why not take it? So I actually wasn't very keen on staying in the UK because I didn't enjoy the weather. I think it was also very hard because I was alone and family was this side. So I applied jokingly, but I was hoping something else would come from South Africa, something more that would make me go back. That's also worth it. But then I got a job offer in the UK and I got a job offer in Dubai. And we looked at both offers and it made sense for us to take the offer in the UK.
So a lot of young engineers, Paseka, like yourself, actually, they leave South Africa for it could sound like training or a contract that is like 2 years, and they end up staying. And you look at countries like your UK, your Canada, your Australia, and I mean, there's always hope for the industry that we want to retain these people. They need to come back, integrate their learning, that we improve our industry. But that hardly ever happens. What makes young engineers what is it that is so attractive that side that we just don't have in South Africa?
I think the obvious one is the compensation. Obviously, the financial aspect. I think that's one of the biggest reasons. But then I think the other thing is realizing that the benefits of living in other countries, it actually doesn't really have anything much to do with the industry or the job market itself. It's also about what the country can offer in terms of safety for your family, in terms of healthcare, for example. So many people end up in these countries and then they realize, oh, my family is safer here, or we are better off here, better than when we were in South Africa. And I think for different people, the decision is different to make, because you're thinking compensation, one, two, you're thinking lifestyle, and then three, you're thinking general family life. And the only thing that can make people want to come back to South Africa is lifestyle most of the time, because the cost of living in other countries is way different from, and the culture and the weather. But I think most people stay when they go to try out other countries. They stay mostly because of the benefits that they get from your national grants for healthcare, how the systems work, public transportation works, generally.
Yeah. And what do you think we should do then as an industry? I mean, we can't solve all the safety problems that are social, but what to attract these young people back? Because I think it adds so much value to integrate global expertise in our industry. What can we do to sort of make it so attractive? Well, let me put it like this. What would make you come back?
What would make me come back is I would love to see our mining industry be more open to adopting the future, or the future way of working. And I know that mostly we are worried about how technology is going to take away jobs. And sometimes we're a bit too focused on that. But there's an element of reskilling and an opportunity for everybody if we adopt all the technology that we keep getting to improve our operations, improve the way that the mining works, and as well as just maximize profits, right? I would come back if a good opportunity came in the strategy space or in the technology space, because that's what I do. I'm in technology, enterprise technology, operational technology, digital mining. If we could adopt that kind of engineering into our mining operations, I think it would open opportunities for young people to try out different careers outside of the traditional mining careers, which I think most people are looking for skills that are also transferable. So you want to be able to not be stuck in one job. You don't want to be stuck in one industry. You want to be able to move if you need to, because as we can see, the world is moving, it's changing constantly. Things change all the time. You do not know what's going to happen. Whether or not we want to be disrupted as an industry, disruption will happen. And it's not guaranteed that your job role or your experiences and skills currently will remain there, if you get what I'm saying. So I think what we can do as an industry is encourage, I know we do, but encourage more adoption on the ground of modern technology, innovation, and just learn from other countries and see what they're doing in their industries to operationalize in a more digital, more modern way that creates other opportunities for different careers outside the traditional careers in mining.
Yeah, talking about actually the area of AI and technology, you are in strategy consulting, and you do a lot of AI work, creating value for organizations, selling AI to companies. And as a consultant, Paseka, you in your career started at the bottom and in the actual mining space. What has that experience helped? How did it help you to excel and even function in the strategy space?
So I think for me, my work ethic. So the first thing is, I started working in the mining industry and I worked, and then I didn't like it and I had to find a way to pivot. And that meant that I needed to be open to taking a step back in my career and fall back compared to my peers. So when I moved into consulting, I had to start over as a graduate on a graduate program, which means I had to humble myself, you know, and it's a new industry, but the nice thing about it is that I could take my experiences and everything that I've learned in my degree and apply it. And what makes me a unique person in the industry or in our job is that you don't have many mining engineers in consulting or in strategy consulting. So that made me stand out because that's a skill, the combination of mining and business and strategy. That combination is what makes me stand out and what makes me unique. Because when you ask, like I said, when you go into speak with mining clients and sell them work, the mentality and how you sell to a mining client is different from how you sell to a banking client.
Absolutely.
And one thing that we have found every single time we're talking to mining clients is the first thing they'll say is, what can you tell me about mining operations?
Sure.
You do not have experience. And then that's when I come into play. They present, we've got a mining engineer. She's got a BSc in mining engineering, one of the most reputable schools in Africa. And she's got the experience as well.
Yeah.
And that creates credibility, not just for myself, but also for the company. So that is what has helped me be successful. But other than just having the credentials, it's also my work ethic. It's also my ability, my willingness to learn. And back to how, when I was as a graduate, I was being successful because I was working with the mining industry or mining clients. But I also realized there was a gap between what I can do and what I'm doing, because I was more technical. And that's why I went and studied a PDBA first and then an MBA to kind of bridge that gap and have the understanding of both the mining and the business side. So that combination, I think, is the winning combination in this space.
Sure. Paseka, somebody looks at you and a lot of things that you have achieved in a fairly short space, and they applaud, and I mean, anybody can be proud of that, and like you say, representation, and they can just see themselves in achieving what you did. But it came with a lot. It came with stress. It came with exhaustion. At some point, I think you were admitted in hospital. Maybe talk to us about what caused that, and one of the things that you have learned and are implementing now at work to make sure you don't go back to that space again. How did you go about that?
So I think when we're younger, we're told to work really hard.
Yeah.
I think my entire life I've been told to work hard. It's probably because of my background, not coming from a very well-off family. You knew that your future's in your hands, and so you put your all. And like I spoke about work ethic, but a lot of things that happen in life are about balance, right? I think one thing we need to acknowledge is that burnout is real. And before you get to burnout, your body gives you warning signs. And this hustle culture that tells us that we need to earn rest is detrimental to not just our health but our career as well. And so I spent a lot of time creating or linking my worth and identity to my career. And so everything that was happening, if I felt like I was failing in my career, I felt like I was failing as a person. So my identity was linked to how much I can achieve. And I think it's taking a step back and understanding that I am worth everything that I have and I deserve it, not because I do not take rest, but because I have put in the work. And putting in the work doesn't mean you do not rest. I've learned to listen to my body. When it says you need to rest, I rest. When it says you need to take a step back, you need to take a step back. One advice I once received from one senior lady who was inspiring lady, and I asked the question about how do you manage work-life balance, and we all know work-life balance is a myth. It's work-life integration. But one of the best things, her answer was, you need to know that as life is a cycle, your career is also a cycle. As a woman, you need to know when to step onto the accelerator, and you need to know when you need to relax. So you need to know that, okay, right now, in the next 2 years, I want to get a promotion. Go hard at it, but focus on that only. Do not try to be everything. You cannot be everything. One thing will crash. But after that promotion, give yourself time to also go back to other things that are not based on your career, and also just give your body time to rejuvenate and rest from that grind. So it's important to understand that life is a cycle, and to also just listen to your body and put in boundaries. And it's funny because I was just thinking about how we always advise people to put in boundaries at work, and we always forget to say it comes with consequences. Whatever boundaries you put in, just because you put in a boundary doesn't mean that people are going to step back. They're probably going to try and push your boundaries. They're probably going to try and retaliate, and be ready and accept those consequences. Just plan around them. So you know that if I do this and I put this boundary, then I'm probably going to be passed over for certain projects. Accept that. Know that it's going to be a reality. And just know that it's part of your plan to be passed off for opportunities in the next year or two.
Sure. When you look at the South African mining industry, there is few women in leadership, and it's something that obviously we would like for it to have a fairly different outlook. How do you How does it look like in your workspace in the UK in terms of, the unique challenges that women face in the workspace, and how do you work around it? And sometimes it's even difficult to want to push through if there isn't, a lot of people that you look up to. So how does it look like in the UK, and is there any unique challenges that you face as an engineer functioning in that space in the country?
So I think, what does it look like? In consulting, we have a lot of female leaders.
Sure.
It's still, it's a pyramid. There's a top,
Yes.
and then there's the top.
Yes.
So at the top, I still think it's very male heavy.
Yeah.
If you look across the globe, anywhere, if you look at the Fortune 500 companies,
Sure.
at the top, it's hardly any women. And I think one thing that I've been thinking about when it comes to women leadership across the globe is we need companies as well as male leaders to actually embrace understanding that women are people. Yes, we are women, but we're people first.
Okay.
Whatever makes a man capable of leading makes a woman capable of leading.
Absolutely.
It has nothing to do with our biological makeup. And once we start looking at it like that, as opposed to looking at it as affirmative action, it's going to then I think it's going to be something that infiltrates and makes it easier for people to put women into leadership roles. Because I think we have exhausted this conversation of we do not have women enough in leadership spaces and we need to do more. We've exhausted it and we keep going back to it because we have made it a thing.
Sure.
It's okay, we need to make sure there's equality or there's equity by pushing more female leaders, and then you find yourself in a space where people think you're not in your position by merit, but you are in your position because you are a woman and they're trying to balance the numbers. And I think no one thinks about that when they think about a man. It's natural. You were a person, you worked hard and you got to where you are in your career. Why is it that with women we have to still think about the fact that, we need to look for the deserving people and push the numbers? We need to get, I don't know how we're going to do that as the world, but we need to move away from the conversation of how do we get more women into leadership spaces and have it be a natural course, if you get what I'm saying. Because it's been how many years? We've been having this conversation. And I don't see why it's different for men, right? I do not want to put aside the challenges that women face in terms of, obviously, when you want to start a family, things like pregnancy and maternity leave may affect your career. But as a natural occurrence of, fine, I'm going to be on maternity leave, but I come back, I work. Does that make me incapable of being in leadership? We should put that aside, if you get what I'm saying. Put that aside and focus on what am I doing and what am I capable of and what do my skills take me? And then promote people and put people in leadership based on merit, based on that, not because they're women, not because we're having conversations and trying to convince people that women deserve to be in leadership roles. We've exhausted that conversation. It's old. It's time to let it go.
I agree. Paseka, South Africa is navigating a very complex energy transition. And I enjoy having this conversation with you in particular because you live in a country and you've got your own energy complexities, but you are experiencing it live. It's pragmatic for you. Maybe talk to us about your experience when it comes to the UK energy mix and the impact it has on you as an engineer, as somebody who's earning, and as somebody who wants a better future and an economic, an enabling environment to function in.
So my experience from a professional perspective and a personal perspective. So from a professional perspective, I think it was very interesting to see how hard the energy industry or the energy sector within the UK works to make sure that there's no blackouts. There's a lot of systems that I will not get into for confidentiality issues, but there's a lot of issues. There's a lot of systems that they have to make sure that a blackout is avoided by all means necessary. And so because of that, in the 3 years that I've been in the UK, we've never experienced a blackout. And it has been interesting for me because I wanted to understand, so how do they get their energy? As I've mentioned, the UK weather is terrible. So it's definitely not solar, although you'll see solar panels everywhere. It's definitely not the windmills we see everywhere as well, because the best thing they have is rain. And I don't think they're using hydropower to power the whole country. And in the same way that the world has been encouraging everyone to phase out coal mining or coal powered stations.
Sure.
That's a very big thing in the UK. I think there are coal powered stations or coal mines, but I'm probably sure it's one. I'm yet to hear about mining in the coal space.
Sure.
And so I wanted to understand, so how do they do it?
Yeah.
How do they manage the demand? And I learned that they actually import electricity from other European countries.
Sure.
So there's a system that they use where they buy electricity. That's a positive in the sense that you'll always be able to meet demand.
Yeah.
The negative part of it is it's privatized.
Yeah.
So they have a sort of bidding system where different people come every single day with their rates and say, we can give you this much power for this much money. And then there's people who are actually working behind that to see who do we buy from today to make sure that we meet the demand today.
Sure.
It works for making sure you can meet demand, but it's expensive when it comes to then the end user on the other side. On a personal experience, the shocker of my life was getting into a house and realizing you need to have an account with 4 different or 3 different service providers just to have light and heated water and electricity to cook. So and because of the way the weather is set up, it's very cold in the UK.
Yeah.
So you'll find people saying around October in the social media space, making jokes about how, oh my goodness, I'd rather wear 5 layers in the house than turn on the heating. We'll turn on the heating when it gets really unbearable. Yeah. But for now, we'll do everything else we can to make sure we're not feeling cold without turning on the heating. And that's when you realize it's too expensive. Like people need to be able to afford it. And I think that's what, from a South African landscape perspective, has been a positive. The fact that it has not been privatized electricity, it has helped to be able to meet, well, not meet demand, but to be affordable.
Yeah.
Given our history, given that most of our South Africans live below the poverty threshold. If we privatize electricity, it is going to be very challenging for most people to afford it. And I think from 1994, the biggest thing that our government has been trying to do with electricity is make sure that everyone has electricity. Because before, the problem we had was not meeting demand. The problem was reach. Impact. Not everybody had electricity. And I think that's where the mistake was. Our government and the leadership industry didn't realize that our current infrastructure in South Africa, energy infrastructure, is not built for that kind of, it doesn't have enough capacity for that kind of demand. We focused more on making sure that everyone has electricity without realizing our infrastructure is not ready for that kind of capacity. However, maybe privatizing certain parts of it to be able to then share that kind of energy. And I haven't really processed this thought, but I'm just thinking, could it be possible to have a world in which we have privatized electricity that can be sold to people who can afford it in South Africa, and then have electricity or energy that can then be still kept at the same price for our people who cannot afford it? And so like I was saying, in the UK, you need to have a different account for electricity that powers your light. And then you need to have a different account for a gas supplier, which then powers your heating your water or heating the house. And so it gets expensive because now it's different rates. And because it's privatized, the rates keep changing all the time, especially in winter, unless if you choose a high premium, then you lock your price for the year. And I look at it and I say, the thing is, the cost of living in the UK versus South Africa, it's not the same, as well as how the UK is subsidized on many other areas of their social lives that they can afford, but we still hear of people saying, oh, their families are freezing because they cannot afford gas for heating. And can you see how detrimental that would be for our country, where majority of the population is living under the poverty threshold?
Yeah, look, when you look at then the journey that South Africa is taking, Paseka, I think the just energy transition, I think the big idea around that is just to move away from, powering our energy with coal and move more renewable, obviously to address climate change issues and talking sustainability. With your lived experience and having leaders listen to what other people are experiencing on the ground, what would your advice be in terms of the direction we should honestly take that will be economically enabling for a lot of South Africans?
I think our government, our leaders in energy have probably thought about this. It's well thought of.
Yeah.
They are probably well advised, and there's probably nuances that we are not experts in the space, we do not understand. But from a personal take, and at the risk of sounding very immature in the space, I'm just thinking, look at the first world countries. Even they are not using sustainable energy 100%. Like I'm saying, the UK has phased out most of their coal mining, but they're still powering most of their power from coal-powered stations that are not in the country by buying. So what they've done now is they've offset their coal impact to other countries. It doesn't affect their country, obviously, because then the power stations and the mining is not happening within the UK as they are buying the electricity from other countries. But those countries are powering that power from where? Coal-powered stations. So I don't want to say it's impossible to go fully sustainable, but when you drive in the UK and you go around the countryside, you see a lot of windmills. And like I said, most houses have solar powered stations, like they've got solar powers on their houses, solar panels, rather, and they're still not fully sustainable. We do have a lot of solar energy in South Africa. We have a lot of sun, but I don't think that alone will be able to cater for everybody. And affordability again is going to be very difficult. I think there's a world in which both sustainability or sustainable energy or renewable energy can work with coal-powered energy. Especially because when we talk about how the UK imports the energy from the other European countries, if you think about it, South Africa is the export of electricity within Africa. So being able to meet our demand and our export demand, which is dependent upon economically by the rest of Africa, I don't think is the best way to go for Africa as a whole. And as African leaders, South Africa is an African leader, I think we need to find another way to offset this issue with coal-powered stations versus renewable energy.
So clearly, Paseka, the impact of this goes far beyond the coal miner who might lose his job, or somebody who works at a power plant or who is empowered by, or the community has a plant and they're empowered by it's most likely to impact literally every single person. How important is it for just ordinary South Africans and also just young people as well to involve themselves in these kind of conversations before years later, where we have to live with the impact of a decision that we decided not to be part of?
I think it's very important, just like any other socio-political situation or topic that we face in our country in Africa. It's very important for us to start by educating ourselves. I think we need to develop an interest in topics of issues that will impact or currently impact our lives as young people. Understand what sustainability is, why it's important, read up about it, but also understand how electricity or energy is generated currently. Understand why decisions are being made and who's making the decisions, and understand why, because people make decisions for very different reasons. Understand why a specific government that's currently leading would make a certain decision. Who's on the panel of people making those decisions? Is it a business decision, or is it really thoughts of the community at large? And involve ourselves in these conversations. Attend seminars, attend events that are available there where they talk about renewable energy. And I think, moreover, try and understand how you, in your own personal capacity, can work on getting your family out of the grid if you can. So if individual families, which is probably going to be very expensive and highly unlikely to be able to be achieved at a large scale in South Africa, but if you have the means to get your family out of the grid, do it. Find out how you can do it economically and also efficiently, because clearly we are struggling with capacity. And I think I'm saying this, but most families do currently have solar in their homes. Everyone is trying to figure out how to not be impacted by load shedding, which I think it's good because it's forced us, it's pushed us into thinking about how we can help move away from the grid. Because if those who can move themselves out of the grid do that, then we free up space for those who cannot, if you get what I'm saying. So we need to We need to educate ourselves, understand why things are being done, how they're being done. And there's always going to be petitions. There is no policy that is being applied in our country that is not where they do not involve the public.
Yeah.
The question is, do you know how you can get involved in the conversations? And you will not know if you do not educate yourself.
Yeah.
And how do you educate yourself? You read, you attend seminars, you attend events, you speak, you network, you speak to people who are in the industry who understand this, people who are educated in that space. Yeah.
Look, Paseka, living far from home can be very challenging. And sometimes you look at people who leave the country and they take so long to come back. You're like, but why don't you come back? But there is genuine challenges that comes with living far that makes it harder to come home, that somebody who doesn't know would expect to do. Maybe talk to us about the challenges, or somebody who wants to leave the country understands the impacts or challenges they would face when it comes to coming home regularly.
So there's a couple. I'll start with the most common one, which is, remember, you're not going, unless you are, but I'm assuming you are going overseas, not on an entrepreneurial journey, but more on an employment journey, which would have similar employment conditions as you have in South Africa. Your leave days are limited. You do not have unlimited leave. And so coming home, depending on where you are in the world, but for example, a flight from London Heathrow is 12 hours. You fly into Johannesburg, you still need to drive 6 hours to Limpopo to meet your family. You need to factor the fact that if I'm going to take a 2 weeks leave, 4 days within those 2 weeks is traveling. Do you have enough days to be able to see your family as much as you can? How many times can you come home? That's the first factor. The second factor is one that everyone makes jokes about on social media, where people say, oh, I left South Africa to go work in the UK to make money so I can afford going on holiday in South Africa. And then I realized the flights to South Africa are too expensive. So now I can't afford to go home for holidays. So it's that. Most of the time, you don't want to come home when everyone is busy and is at work, because then it defeats the purpose of being there. You want to be home during holidays, and that's when peak costs are for flights. And you can think that's very small, but the flights in December, for example, flights in Easter, you don't want to, you might not be able to afford that, or choose not to, because it just doesn't make sense. So the cost of traveling. And then other things that I did not expect that happened to me was having a child in the UK, giving birth in the UK. The biggest challenge that we faced was getting him passports, South African passports, because I don't know, apparently when you apply for passports in the UK for South Africa by Home Affairs in the UK, you have to wait a minimum of 6 months for them to actually process that passport. And then on top of that, you still need to apply for a visa, unless if you are planning to send your child home and not return to the UK with them. That's going to give you at least another month, if not more. And so those kinds of challenges is what we face in terms of being able to see your family regularly.
Look, Paseka, you were planning to come home, and having mentioned having a child and waiting so long to finally, get the documents. And finally, as you're planning to come home, you lost your mom. I'm so sorry about that. Maybe talk to us about when you received the call and what that did to you.
So I think my friends and I who are in the UK constantly talk about the sacrifice of living overseas, is realizing that you miss out on last moments with family members. You miss out on being there for family members when they're going through a hard time. And we constantly live with the anxiety of, can we not lose anyone? Do you know what I'm saying? So I think receiving that call for me, first thing first, I think anybody who hears about the death of a close loved one, the first thing you have is shock, and then it's denial. And that makes the denial part is even worse, because you haven't seen this person such a long time. You did not get to see them in their last moments, if it's by illness. If it's not natural causes, then it's the same shock you'd feel, in the sense that I didn't see this person sick. You didn't go through the process of accepting that they're sick and you might lose them. So it was shock and it was denial. And I think it's the same denial that people try to avoid by saying, go and see the go and when they view the person in the mortuary, go there and see the person so you see that they're really gone, because that's how you get your closure. So if you do not have the means to fly home immediately and you miss the funeral, I do not know how you get that closure, because the biggest impact I had from that call was denial. It cannot be. It cannot be. And the shock of, oh my goodness, I didn't get to say goodbye. I have not seen my mother in 3 years in person. She has not met my son. You know, that panic, it cannot be. But then I think I quickly reconciled with that by saying she could not be physically, but my mom and I talked very regularly. Thank God for technology. Because every single milestone she was a part of, literally, she's the person I would call crying because of pregnancy hormones, and she'd be the one to calm me down. Far away as she might have been, she was there. She's the same person who'd say, oh, what's happening? Is the baby sleeping well? No, he's crying. Try this, try that. How many teeth do they have? Does the baby have? Things like that. Or it could be teething. So she did not miss out on any milestone, which gives me that peace. She was part of our lives. She was part of my child's life. Although the physical aspect of it was not there. And that's the sacrifice you make when you leave your family behind.
Sure. How do you maintain your connection to South Africa? I mean, for different things. You are a philanthropist. You love working with young people. You love giving back. And I mean, your heart is obviously here. So how do you keep yourself connected to, you know, the things that are happening in the country while you're building your career in the UK?
It's very challenging. I will not lie. It's very challenging. And it's funny because, as I said, technology is there. But the personal, I think we sometimes underestimate the power of physical engagement. Because to be able to know what problems are on the ground, you sometimes need the exposure. And you do not get that when you're far away. But I think in as much as we like to demonize social media, it helps to be on social media. For example, right now there's a big cause where everyone is asking and calling for justice for Kwekwe. You are able to see that. You can have an impact virtually on that. You can have an impact financially on that to be able to support. You have a voice. And probably my voice is more impactful right now with the use of social media because it has more reach than it would had it not been for social media. So I keep in touch with my friends in the industry. You know, I do call sometimes and ask, oh, in planning, do you still use this software? Or what's the best software to use? Or I'm thinking this is how we solve a problem. I know recently I spoke to someone who said, I was asked the question of how can we use generative AI to help a client who is mining cement with dilution during their blasting. And I was like, I haven't been in blasting in a while, but this is what I'm thinking. But I have friends in the industry who are in blasting and who are in planning. And so I reach out and I say, friend, this is what I think about this. Does it make sense? What other things do you think I should be thinking about? Keeping that connection and that network with the people that you know, the people you already had a network with. That's very important. Social media is playing a big part socially for me to keep up with I mean, South Africa currently is very popular. It's everywhere. Everyone's talking about South Africa and everyone says, I miss the time when South Africa was a secret. But it's easy to keep up with South African politics right now when everyone is talking about them, including Donald Trump. You know what I'm saying? So social media, keeping in touch with my friends, reading up as much as I can about South African politics.
Paseka, having attended or doing your MBA in the UK, I mean, you had an exposure of your life. What are the biggest takeaways that you took from that space, and what experiences stood out for you?
So I think it was, a lot has happened within the MBA, and especially because the MBA was only a year. So there was a lot to take away. There was a lot prioritization was a very big lesson that I had to learn, because you're trying to take as much as you can socially, but also you're there for academics. That's what's important. But one thing people will tell you about an MBA is the biggest takeaway you can get from an MBA is a network. The people you meet, because you are meeting like-minded people. With different experiences from different spaces at different levels. So I think the biggest thing is, that was the beauty of having doing my MBA at Oxford or Said Business School, is the diversity. the diversity because they do prioritize diversity, and that's why I chose that specific MBA. The second thing is the Side Business School MBA focuses a lot on impact, that's social impact. So there was a lot of work that we did with understanding how we can go back into our countries and impact socially. How do we help women? Again, the conversation of how do we help women get into leadership? How do we ourselves get into leadership with whatever experience we have to make sure that there's representation and to just show that we can do it, this capacity. So impact, sustainability, all of that was very interesting to pick up. I was part of the Oxford Africa Alliance Committee. So that was a very big highlight for me because I got to be part of the planning of and the execution of the big Oxford Africa Alliance conference that they have annually in March. And there I got exposed to different leaders and people who are doing really big things in Africa across. So being exposed to that. Another big aspect that the MBA exposes you to is the thoughts of entrepreneurship and how you can move into entrepreneurship. And there's a lot of support for there's a lot of VC support. So if you want to move into that space, raising funds for your business, how to sell, how to create a pitch, there's even support of going in and saying, this is my business idea and this is what I'm doing. What can I do better? There's mentorship. And even after I've left the MBA, I can still go back for career support. It's still there. The alumni space allows for that. So that was the greatest takeaway. I think the other greatest takeaway was one thing I missed out on for lack of finances at the time or balancing finances was the travel aspect of it. But then the nice thing is I'm still in the UK, so I've been able to make up for it. But what I did realize is most of my peers at the time who had taken the opportunity to travel across Europe because you are in the vicinity and so it's easier to do that. Another key highlight was learning about the history of Christianity in Oxford because that's where most of it originates from a Catholic perspective. The city itself is rich with culture. It's rife with culture. So learning about the culture of Oxford, learning about how there's matriculation and all the different regalias that we wore and all the different ceremonies that are there, the college dinners, and just being able to see where some of the inspiration for the book and the movie, why am I forgetting now? Harry Potter. Yes, just experiencing that and seeing where some of the inspiration for it came from was quite exciting.
Pasi, looking ahead in the mining industry, how does it look like? Especially for you, somebody who is in the AI space, how does the future of mining, particularly for Africa, look like to you?
So, interesting enough, I've just been I've been exposed to a piece of work that's being done where there's a greenfield mine that is being opened somewhere in Africa. And it was very shocking to me to hear the client say, we are not digitizing the mine. We're not going to be going autonomous with anything. We are going conventional. And I thought, we're in 2025. How is this still a conversation? How is this still something that you decide for a greenfield mine? You literally have it. You can create your own blueprint. You've got a blank page. You can do whatever you want. And there's a lot of technology. And we can learn from Australia where they have an autonomous mine. And I think it's working very well. So I think we have rich minerals, right? And I don't think we have exhausted, especially the gold. We've got a couple of gold mines closed because we cannot, it's by human strength or capacity, we cannot reach the levels for safety reasons. I believe technology, Gen AI and AI in general, can help subserve some of those issues. If only we were open to it. And at the risk of sounding like a techie, I really do believe that there's a lot of untapped resources that we might be able to tap into if we were more open to bringing the technology that can help. And also be more open to, I think, experimenting. Because right now we cannot experiment with human lives. But if we could put in technology, we could experiment with technology. There is no life to be lost.
Sure, Paseka, thank you so much for your rich insight, and it was so invaluable. And I'm so glad I could catch you before you fly back to the UK. I'm so glad to have had this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Paseka's insights on talent mobility, UK energy framework, and South Africa's just energy transition highlight the importance of global knowledge sharing when addressing our most pressing issues. Thanks for watching. Bye bye, and God bless.